Life moves so fast, it's so easy to lose sight of your goals and to lose sight of what really matters.
Yeah, and our next guest says that life's too short to get swept up in that day-to-day frenzy that we all happen to get swept up into. So author Vicki Carroll is here with a strategy to step back, figure out what you want, and go after it. You say a lot of moms are not really thriving. They're just sort of living. What stops us from thriving?
Well, what stops us from thriving is that we don't have clarity about ourselves and our direction. Uncertain feelings about who am I and what's important to me.
So is clarity the key to thriving then?
Absolutely. It's about self-defining. We thrive when we take a close look at discovering ourselves and creating a self-definition. Have you ever thought about how do you define yourself? When you create your self-definition, you look at the who, the what, and the why. Who am I? What's important to me, and why? And after you've created that self-definition, take time to step back and look at the big picture. You will thrive when your self-definition and the direction your life is moving are compatible. You have a question?
Well, what does a self-definition look like exactly? Is it a sentence, a paragraph?
It's always changing.
Okay.
It's who you are and what's important to you and why. So it can be a myriad of things. I'm, a wife. I'm a mom. I'm a speaker. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a motivator. It's who you are, what's important to you, and moving your life in a direction that's compatible, and from that you thrive.
I would imagine that's sort of an aha moment for people when they come up with that self-definition of what they are. What happened? Do you have an experience when you were coming up with yours?
I share this in my seminars. It's dear to my heart. It happened over 20 years ago when our son, who's now 24, was about 2. I came home from being on the road traveling with my business, and I heard him in the family room. I was going through some mail, and I heard him say, "Mommy." And I was anticipating him coming to me with a hug and a kiss, and I realized at that moment that he was calling our nanny Mommy. And so I was paralyzed by that reality. What had happened is my self-definition had shifted. I was now a mom. That was a big, that was a new piece of my self-definition. But my life, the direction, had not been changed. So the two were not compatible. 2 choices: redefine or move the direction of my life. I wasn't going to redefine. I wanted to be a mom. So I needed to step back, look at the big picture, and say, hey, I need to make some changes in my work schedule. I want to be home more.
Probably the easiest thing to do is to say what you want to be. It's often harder to become what you want to be or to make that change after you heard that happen with your son. How do you make that change and start altering your behavior to line up with your goals?
Well, you first have to look at limitations. Limitations are anything that prevent forward progression, and personal limitations. It's a belief, a habit, a situation, even a handicap that prevents you from moving forward. And you also need to look at the limitation and say, is it changeable or manageable? A manageable limitation cannot be altered. Like a physical handicap, you learn to manage it. We're going to focus today on the changeable limitations, those things that can be altered.
Well, let's jump into that. What are some common limitations you think that hold us back, that we need to get over?
Well, self-induced limitations, and one of the most common is fear of failure. Our fear just paralyzes us so that we aren't even willing to try. When I lived back east, I had a neighbor that lived down the street, beautiful singing voice, and I was always saying to her, why don't you audition for the community musical productions? But she was so afraid that she would fail that it paralyzed her and she wasn't able to move forward.
You talk about also a lack of self-control that can limit us from making those personal choices and personal changes.
We see a lack of self-control. This is really an absence of balance in our choices. And we see this a lot when we're trying to modify behavior, like engage in an exercise program or change our eating or spending habits. A scenario, Brooke, a coworker comes to you and says, I want to start walking during lunch. Are you willing to do that with me? Be my support, be my motivator. So the first week goes pretty good. The second week, now she's walking every other day, and by the end of the second or third week, she's just decided that exercise isn't for her. It's too hard. Well, there's no control there.
Vicki, this sounds way too familiar.
Hey, we all all come across this. And the way we move past it is, first of all, to believe in our plan. We only change when we want the change. We're far more successful at change when we initiate it. We're not doing it for someone else. Staying focused and self-disciplined, that's key. And we do that by the belief and, you know, doing it for ourselves and setting up a realistic plan. And walking during lunch was realistic, but the belief for her wasn't there.
Do we have a little bit of this blame game that also comes into play when we're putting these limitations on ourselves?
That is such a good point. Taking blame can be hard when we know we've made a mistake and we have to, you know, step up and say, hey, I made a mistake here. But it can empower us, and when we do that, then we gain so much from it. We have to understand that when it comes to owning choices and consequences, when we own it, it empowers us, and it creates opportunities for us to grow. And from that, we then have the ability to define ourselves in a positive way, move our lives forward in a positive way, because we're in control, and from that we thrive.
Why do you think it's so hard for people to say, I made a mistake, or I dropped the ball, or take that blame, transfer that blame?
Because it shows weakness, but the weakness can become a strength if we embrace it. A month ago, I had a mom come to me and very concerned about her teenage daughter that I guess was struggling with this. I simply said to her, if you don't own it, you can't change it. And that's important, because without change, there is no forward progression. Yeah. And without that progression, we don't thrive.
You mentioned mother and daughter. Mother and daughter relationships are sort of your specialty. You even have a special workshop coming up on that.
I do. I'm so excited about this. It's actually hosted by Fitness EDU, and they're collaborating with a national organization, Girls on the Run. And I'll be presenting Mother-Daughter Connection on April 14th at the Convention Center, the Salt Palace. So moms, if you have a daughter between 8 and 13, join us. It's about empowering them, connecting with them, and building a healthy relationship.
What a great Girls' Day, and to soak up more inspiration and advice like this.
Please come if they have daughters. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for being here.